سوا على الهوا سوا على طول سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموت كنا سوا.
يمكنكم الآن متابعة برنامج سوا على الهواء على قناة ميوزك لايف عبر الديش نتورك شانل 633. البرنامج يبث لمستمعينا يوم الثلاثاء الساعة 8 صباحا حسب التوقيت الشرقي للولايات المتحدة في ميشيغان وتوليدو وأوهايو ووينزر كندا على الموجة المتوسطة WNZK 690 AM، ولمستمعينا في مناطق واشنطن وفرجينيا وميريلاند على الموجة المتوسطة WDMV 700 AM. يمكنكم الاستماع للبرنامج عبر الاتصال من أي هاتف على الرقم 702-489-0120. يتلقى البرنامج اتصالاتكم مباشرة من داخل الولايات المتحدة على الهاتف رقم 248-557-3300. الإضافة عبر سكايب US Arab Radio. للاستماع للبودكاست ushammedia.com.
Today's program is brought to you by Utica Schools and Marygrove College.
Welcome to the United States. Please proceed to the passport control.
ماذا يقول؟ إلى أين أذهب؟ ماذا علي أن أفعل؟ لو سمحت هل تساعدني؟ ماذا قال هذا الرجل في الإعلان؟
ألا تعرف الإنجليزية؟
أعرف ولكن أساسيات فقط.
عليك بتعلم اللغة.
ولكن أين؟
يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام، أساتذة متخصصون، منهج متميز، يمكنك التسجيل طوال العام. لرسوم التسجيل ومواعيد الفصول الدراسية عليك الاتصال بالهاتف رقم
586-797-6960 586-797-6960.
تحدث اللغة وتعلم نمط الحياة مع يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام. تعلم، تحدث وأكثر.
There's a cool vibe in Detroit these days, the same vibe that's at Marygrove College. We've got great career-oriented degrees that will put you on a path to your future, on campus and online. Why not explore Marygrove? You could start college this spring. Go to marygrove.edu or call 313-927-1240 to get more information. International students pay the same rate as domestic students, and let us empower you. Renee's running a little late, so we're going to listen to some Fairuz just until she gets here. She'll be here at any moment now.
Good morning. And welcome, everybody. Ahlo sahla. I'm delighted to be back on Sawa al-Hawa, together on air. I'm your host, Renée Ahee, for this morning's program discussion on the impact of the Trump Muslim ban and the anti-immigrant sentiment in American society and U.S. global relations, issues that impact each and every one of us and our families, with a discussion also of their impact on U.S. colleges and universities as a microcosm of the U.S. society. Our program this morning will be entirely in English, but we welcome your questions and your comments. I want to thank Leila Al-Husseini again, who encourages different voices on this important broadcast service to the community here and abroad. We welcome you from anywhere you're listening. U.S. Arab Radio provides an opportunity for open discussion on a variety of topics of importance to the Arab American community and to the community at large. So, Leila, thank you. So, please stay with us for this critical topic in the lives of all Americans. We're going to be joined this morning by two wonderful guests, Dr. Ron Stockton, whom, if you listened to us a year ago, was with us to talk about the election cycle, and then Dr. Denise Williams Mallet, who will be with us for the last segment of our show today. First, I'm delighted and honored to have with us again a friend, Dr. Ron Stockton. He's a noted professor of political science at the University of Michigan, Dearborn, and a research associate at the University of Michigan Center for Middle East and North African Studies. Dr. Ron Stockton is the author of 5 books, or co-author of 5 books. He was one of 2 principal investigators on the Detroit Arab American Study, which was a landmark public opinion study of representative samples of over 1,000 Arab Americans and Chaldeans in southeast Michigan. His research fields and interests include the role of religion and religio-ethnic groups in the political process, political conflict in the Middle East, especially the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, Arab Americans, public opinion, and political behavior. So I want to welcome you back, Dr. Ron. Thank you for being here. Together we're going to be exploring a topic of great importance, the Muslim ban and the anti-immigrant sentiment in this country. Ron, how are you?
I'm fine, Renee. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us again. I know our listeners responded so well and so positively to the program last year on the election, and you've been observing what's been going on since that election. So you have a whole lot to tell us. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to invite your questions and comments for Dr. Stockton at 248-557-3300. But first, I'd like to set the stage. Immediately after the new president took office, he issued an executive order banning people from 7 different Muslim nations. It had an immediate impact of rallying groups in opposition to the ban. There has been rising anti-immigrant sentiment and racial, verbal, and physical attacks on Americans of various heritage and religion. So, Ron, in your view, what accounts for both the ban and the flagrant anti-immigrant activity in the country?
I think there's a block of people, some organized, some just in public opinion, who really don't like Muslims. Public opinion polls are very interesting. There's a lot of people who have Muslim friends. They generally have very high opinions of Muslims. There are people who have never met a Muslim, never met an Arab. Their views are more skeptical. Their views have been poisoned, I think, by an organized group of professional, they're sometimes called Islamophobes, people who stir up fear and hostility. And fear, I think, is a driving force. After September 11th, we were traumatized, and there have been several other incidents, San Bernardino and the attack on the nightclub in Florida. Those things have traumatized Americans. And it's very easy when people are afraid and they don't have personal friends in a category to be told that that category is somehow a security threat. So I think a big factor is whether you actually know an Arab or a Muslim. If you do, your views are more nuanced, but some people don't. So President Trump, I think, as a candidate, played to that sentiment and played to the people who listen to certain types of media outlets where those issues are made into prominence. I think that sets the tone. So we've got 2 things that are going on here. One is a matter of law. Once he came into office, he was then in a position to issue executive orders. The other is an angry element within the public which strikes out at other individuals. So we've had 2 things. One is the executive order. The second thing are incidents of attacks on Muslims and non-Muslims, because very often people can't tell the difference between, right, for example, a Sikh, who is not a Muslim at all, someone from India, and a person who's a Muslim. If you got head cover, that identifies you. And so we have kind of a double whammy. The president has created a public situation that makes it very risky for individuals.
In that context, we have seen attacks on Indian Americans and, as you said, Sikhs and others who most Americans can't tell the difference or won't take the time to tell the difference. And it is also, we've always had this underlying racism in the country. And my question for you is, what is the benefit of playing to that? What kind of country do we become when we play on fears like that and when we prey on other people?
Well, it might provide short-term benefit to someone running for office. If you can flip 3 or 4% of the vote, it might make the difference between winning and losing. So we call these people demagogues. A demagogue is someone who plays upon the fears or hostilities of one group of the population for another group of the population to advance their personal benefit. And so these are demagogic politicians who do this sort of thing. They don't necessarily even believe it. They just think, if I can make these people angry at those people, maybe they'll vote for me. And so that's a short-term benefit. The long-term consequence is catastrophic. It divides the society. It turns us against each other. It introduces fear at the very center of our thinking. These are all really negative and harmful impacts. And when we turn to universities in a few minutes, which I know you want to do, we'll talk about some practical implications.
Indeed, there's a financial implication, of course, as we talk about our universities. We saw an immediate effect on U.S. colleges and campuses and on the students who were from those banned countries. Many were detained and searched when they tried to re-enter the U.S., and others were told not to leave the country for fear of not being able to come back. So, you know, we can see this, and I use the term microcosm of U.S. society because on our college campuses we see so much going on. In 2016, there were over 1 million international students in private and public universities and colleges in the U.S. That's according to the Institute of International Education. So how are the ban and the seemingly flagrant anti-immigrant sentiment affecting higher education? And specifically, you have a large Arab American population, maybe first and second generation, at the University of Michigan Dearborn, which has the Arab population is rather large in that community. Can you talk a little bit about both of those things generally?
Yes. You know, it's timing is perfect because just yesterday, President Schlissel, the president of the whole University of Michigan system, was on my campus overseas to teach in our classes and do research and do what they do. And so he's very alarmed at the implications for the very viability of the university system if somehow there's a disruption of the flow of expertise into American universities. Now, your question is more focused on the students, which I think is very appropriate. We have on my campus, we just have two elements with two blocks of students that are, we might call foreign students. We have a group of Chinese students on campus. We have an arrangement, and a group of Chinese students come. And we also have a group of Omani students. And Oman is very friendly to the United States. It's definitely not targeted in any way. So those are two elements. Most of our students who are of Muslim background are Arabs. We also have large numbers of Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. And we even have Turks and Iranians, and have an Iranian student this semester. So we have Muslims from various countries. I would say that those people are American citizens. They're mostly born here. They are not afraid of the ban because it's not affecting them personally, but they're afraid of two things. One is the environment of that's being created, which is very disturbing. And the second is they have relatives who maybe, a favorite niece or someone is getting married,
sure,
and someone wants to go back, an aunt who is an immigrant and now has perhaps a green card, wants to go back to Lebanon or wherever it is to get to the wedding and is actually afraid to go because they might not be allowed to get back in. So we have people who are changing their travel plans just because of a fear that somehow they're going to be caught up in some last-minute executive order that is maybe not even in place right now, but it will be by the time they're flying back.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break in just a moment, but I'd like you to have this number to call in to Dr. Stockton, 248-557-3300. Dr. Stockton, if you'll hold on one second, we're going to take a short break.
Welcome to the United States. Please proceed to the passport control.
ماذا يقول؟ إلى أين أذهب؟ ماذا علي أن أفعل؟ لو سمحت، هل تساعدني؟ ماذا قال هذا الرجل في الإعلان؟
ألا تعرف الإنجليزية؟
أعرف، ولكن أساسيات فقط.
عليك بتعلم اللغة.
ولكن أين؟
يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام، أساتذة متخصصون، منهج متميز، يمكنك التسجيل طوال العام. لرسوم التسجيل ومواعيد الفصول الدراسية عليك الاتصال بالهاتف رقم
586-797-6960 586-797-6960.
تحدث اللغة وتعلم نمط الحياة مع يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام. تعلم، تحدث وأكثر.
There's a cool vibe in Detroit these days, the same vibe that's at Marygrove College. We've got great career-oriented degrees that will put you on a path to your future, on campus and online. Why not explore Marygrove? You could start college this spring. Go to marygrove.edu or call 313-927-1240 to get more information. International students pay the same rate as domestic students, and let us empower you.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
Good morning, world. This is Renée Ahee, your host for Sawa al-Hawa. We're together on air with Dr. Ron Stockton. And Ron, we have a caller. I think it's our friend Jerry. Jerry, good morning.
Good morning to you, Mr. Renee. Long time no see, almost a year.
Oh, well, yes, indeed. It has been a long time, but it's good to talk with you. Thank you for calling again.
Thank you, Mr. Renee, taking my call. And good morning to you, Dr. Ron Stockman.
Hello, Jerry.
Yes, sir. How are you?
Good.
I was surprised to see you back with Miss Renee. I do believe I spoke to you about a year ago. Thank you for taking my call. And the point I want to make is over here, Dr. Ron, that first of all, I'm an American to be proud, Iraqi Chaldean. And, I was one of the immigrants who immigrated here 44 years ago. So I do believe, Dr. Ron, this great country was built on on immigrants from all over the world. And I do be happy to see any immigrant or refugees coming here. But the point I want to make it over here, Dr. Ron. Dr. Ron, there is 1.7, if I'm right, Muslim all over the world. And when United States President, Mr. Donald J. Trump, put the ban on 7 Muslim countries, which they are right now, 6 countries exclude Iraq lately. So that means those 6 countries, if you come to the percentage, they don't make maybe 10% of the whole Muslim all over the world. So that means we have the great countries, big countries with population like Indonesia, Malaysia. So the point I want to make it, why we should always say it's against Muslim, which is not. It is against some countries who there's no such a government, no such a safe ordinance, there's no such a law. I mean, look at Somalia, look at Libya, look at, those countries, there's no such a government rules. I mean, it is a chaos, you know what I mean, Dr. Ron. So why the people, or especially the media, change their tune? Like, this is not the ban against Muslim. It's against terrorism all over the world. And when President Donald Trump issued this order, it's not against Renee or against Dr. Ron or against Jerry. It's for our safety, the safety of this land, the safety of the United States of America.
Thank you,
and
Jerry.
I will hear you respond, and thank you again, and God bless you, and God bless America.
Thank you. Dr. Ron, if you want to address that would be terrific.
Yeah, I'd love to. Jerry has made some really good points, and they're points that have been raised by a lot of very thoughtful people, that this is not an anti-Muslim ban as much as it is targeting certain countries. These countries all have what we might call weakened or failed states, where it's really hard for those countries themselves to screen out who might be connected to an extremist group. You've got a group like ISIS, which has a policy of infiltrating agents into Europe. They've never done that in this country. When you see someone claim, they blow up someone like San Bernardino and say, I'm an ISIS agent, well, they just decided that. There's no indication that they really were. Mm-hmm. And someone would tweet that just, at the moment. But there's a legitimate concern there. Now, one thing that people don't realize is that in the past, people would have gotten their visas to come to this country from the U.S. Embassy. They still would get them from the U.S. Embassy, but the U.S. Embassy doesn't issue the visa. The visa has to go through Homeland Security. So Homeland Security is now basically in charge of issuing visas, although you'll get the stamp at the embassy. Okay. I heard the former Director of National Intelligence say, we already have, this is Mr. Clapper, and a very respected person, he said, we already have extreme vetting. We go through people with a fine-tooth comb. You do not get into this country if we have anything that we know about you that might indicate that you're a security threat. The question then is, why do we even need this? I'll tell you what I think happened. I think President Trump, when he was a candidate, made these points over and over and over again for political reasons. And then when he got into office, he needed to deliver with an executive order. I don't think he knows very much about these topics. He's never indicated that he really understands how complex this is. Well, for example, if you've got an Iraqi who has served with the American security forces as an interpreter, for example, and generally speaking, people like that may be a threat, at risk once they, leave service. Those people would often be given permission to come to this country. To exclude a person like that just because we say, well, Iraq has got a chaotic situation in some regions, that's not very logical. In fact, it's counterproductive. So, and to exclude people with green cards who are legally resident and happen to be visiting their family somewhere and saying you can't come back, this was the problem with that first executive order, which seemed to be put together very quickly and ill-conceived and badly done.
Well, I have an opinion about governing by executive order, but to our point about the U.S. colleges and universities, and to your point that this ban may not have been well thought out. Fortune magazine's reporter Katie Riley wrote that the U.S. colleges could lose up to $700 million in revenue per year if Trump's immigration ban on at that time it was 7 Muslim countries, becomes permanent. And so, long-term immigration restrictions will have a lasting impact on our college campuses, and, it might damage the nation's economy as a whole, is what she said. So I guess I'd like to address that, too, because, again, we're talking about an impact of this kind of restrictive movement of people. Are we restricting our economy as well?
I think it's definitely true, and there's a whole bunch of dimensions to this. If you're a university provost and you're trying to balance the budget, and you get $1 million from students from Saudi Arabia, and maybe they're going to just get fed up with this and start going to Canada, which many apparently are doing. Yeah. Then suddenly you're $1 million short, and you say, wait, what happened to our $1 million, and how do we balance the budget? So that's a practical consideration. This happened once before. Back in the 1970s, the Saudis, and I'm singling out the Saudis because of their unique situation. The Saudis sent an exceptionally large number of students to the United States. Mm-hmm. They thought this is going to be long-term a good thing for our country. If a lot of our young people have studied in the United States, speak English with an American accent, know American culture, have American friends, this is going to really make us a stronger country. So they had a security consideration in sending their students here. Sometime in the 1980s, when the Reagan administration came to power and there was some anti-Islamic rhetoric coming out of that administration, they stopped doing that. The number of Saudi students just dried up. This, I think, was a real damage to us, because even as the Saudis benefit by having their young people familiar with American culture, we benefit by having Saudis who understand how Americans think and American considerations. So this was a damage to our, leaving aside the universities, from a security point of view, a national interest point of view, we really benefit by having foreign students who come here, study, get degrees, and go back to their own countries and become prominent personalities. So that's a very significant factor. If that money dried up, then the provosts of the various universities would be in very bad shape.
Well, there are two factors that came into my mind when you said that. That's the difference between an isolationist rather policy and one that has a worldview of sharing ideas and sharing cultures and benefiting both sides of a trade agreement or both sides of a cultural exchange and so on and so forth. And effectively, your point about the Saudis in the 70s, and it's happening here, according to the Money magazine, just the other day, which was last week on the 14th, they were talking about the anti-immigrant sentiment and the ban resulting in a shift of attitudes overseas, and it could increase tuition prices for our own students, because often international students will pay up to 3 times more than the domestic student. And so that means that if we're going to run the universities, our own students are going to have to carry more of an already heavy burden, and they may not even be able to handle the tuition at that point, and then so we all suffer.
That's an absolute valid point. By the way, I was interested when I was listening to your advertisement during the break that Maryknoll provides the same tuition for overseas students as domestic students.
Yeah.
You can do that because you're a private university.
That's right.
We're a public university. We can't do that, so we charge, as you say, 3 or 4 times more for a foreign student. So those are really, as they say, cash cows. Foreign students bring in a lot of money to the university as well as to the economy and for all sorts of benefits. There's a term, by the way, that people who study international relations use, which I think is a really good term. It's called soft power, and hard power has to do with military and that sort of thing. Soft power has to do with the fact that your country is a place that other people like and admire for different reasons. And the United States has always had an enormous amount of soft power. People like this place. They want to come here. They feel, once students get here, they feel they're treated well. They're respected. They're accepted. This is all to the good, and it certainly increases the image for a prominent family back in some country to say, my son or daughter's out there in the United States and having a fantastic experience and is training and getting a great education. That's worth a lot of influence for the United States.
And I'll talk about it in terms of public relations.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is my field. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. You call it PR, whatever you want to call it. We call it soft power. It means that people are impressed with us and like us and are predisposed to think good of us. We're losing that really, really fast.
Indeed. Everyone, I'd like you to call in to talk with Dr. Stockton at 248-557-3300. And Dr. Ron, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
Welcome to the United States. Please proceed to the passport control.
ماذا يقول؟ إلى أين أذهب؟ ماذا علي أن أفعل؟ لو سمحت، هل تساعدني؟ ماذا قال هذا الرجل في الإعلان؟
ألا تعرف الإنجليزية؟
أعرف، ولكن أساسيات فقط.
عليك بتعلم اللغة.
ولكن أين؟
يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام، أساتذة متخصصون، منهج متميز، يمكنك التسجيل طوال العام. لرسوم التسجيل ومواعيد الفصول الدراسية عليك الاتصال بالهاتف رقم
586-797-6960 586-797-6960.
تحدث اللغة وتعلم نمط الحياة مع يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام. تعلم، تحدث وأكثر.
There's a cool vibe in Detroit these days, the same vibe that's at Marygrove College. We've got great career-oriented degrees that will put you on the path to your future, on campus and online. Why not explore Marygrove? You could start college this spring. Go to marygrove.edu or call 313-927-1240 to get more information. International students pay the same rate as domestic students, and let us empower you.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا.
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Renée Ahee, your host for Sawa al-Hawa. We're together on air with Dr. Ron Stockton, and we're talking about the anti-immigrant sentiment in the country right now, as well as the Muslim ban on 6 different nations. Dr. Ron, a noted PhD at the University of Maryland at College Park, Dr. Fatma Kashavarez, told The Atlantic that by allowing students of different cultures and religions to study with scholars in the U.S., universities accomplish their educational mission of fostering open and lively discussion and teaching students about the world. So she believes that our safety in this country depends on learning these things about other people and other countries, which kind of talks about soft influence, kind of encompasses your concept of soft influence. From your point of view as a professional and a professor, political scientist, and Middle East expert, do you view the mission of academia in the same way? And what do you foresee as the global relations impact of what's going on?
Oh, I tell you, Renee, you just touched my heart here, because this is a thing that I can see every single time I go into my classroom. On my campus, we are really lucky to have students from, 50 or 60 different countries. Every time we have graduation, they calculate how many countries are represented, and it's 50, 60, sometimes more. This is so valuable when I come to talk about certain topics. I'm teaching my class this semester on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I've got students from a whole variety of backgrounds, religious, ethnic, ideological. It is so enriching. I require every student to participate. We have these chat programs on campus. It's called Canvas, and every class has one of these tools. And so every student is required to participate. Every week they have to post something that they thought about what we read or something that came up in class. This is so valuable because they're exchanging ideas. You would not find this in other places. And there was an enormous study done about 10 years ago which showed that the current generation of young people are the most tolerant, open, respectful generation in American history. And what they found was that the explanatory variable was whether you had a friend who was in a category different from yourself. Mm-hmm. So you make a list of your top 5 friends, and if one of them is different from you in some way, then suddenly your mind is opened. So if you're, for example, a Catholic, and you've got a Jewish friend, you're more open to Muslims and to African Americans and to homosexuals and to Mormons and whoever it may be.
What happened to the country in those 10 years, Ron?
Yeah, well, young people are just so different from their parents and certainly from their grandparents, who grew up largely in a more homogeneous culture and environment. And so what these researchers found was that in those areas, for those individuals who don't have that benefit, I tell my students, don't be arrogant or self-righteous. But for those people who grow up in basically a homogeneous community where everyone is exactly like themselves, they don't get the advantage of this. And that's why I mentioned earlier there was a study which shows that if you actually have a friend who is an Arab or a Muslim, and those are different, as you know,
certainly,
but if you have a friend who is in one of those categories, your opinion of them, statistically speaking, rises 20%. That is, do you have a good opinion of these people? It pops up 20% if you actually know someone. So having those people in my classroom just transforms the class. Having people of different backgrounds, whenever I have, for African Americans, when I've got 3 African Americans in a class, I know the whole tone of the class is going to be changed.
In what way,
Ron? If it's only one, the person doesn't want to speak up. If it's only 2, they'll kind of look at each other and not say anything. But if it's 3, they just feel free to say what they think because they know they're not going to be singled out as somehow representing the whole race. I think that diversity within the classroom is so valuable, and if something compromises that, it would be a serious blow to the educational process.
Ron, Jerry has a quick question for us. Jerry, welcome back.
Thanks again, Ms. Renee. Sorry to bother you. Dr. Ron, just an idea. Any visa issue in any United States embassy is issued from United States government. And any embassy, don't you think, Dr. Ron, is a property of the United States of America? So when there's a visa issue in, example, Beirut, Lebanon, and where this person, Lebanese, banned to travel to the USA, don't you think right now we have USA versus USA? Don't you think that will be a no-no because the visa was issued on American property, which is the embassy. So I just want your explanation on this, Dr. Ron, and thanks again for taking my call.
Of course. Thanks, Jerry.
So the focus is on whether the country is divided on these issues. Is that Jerry's point?
Well, that's how I would interpret it, that if they're issuing a visa against the will of the U.S. government, they're issuing a visa for a Lebanese person to come to the States, are we at cross purposes?
Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. Now, I noticed Jerry said earlier, he was just talking about himself and his own personal story, and he said he's been here 24 years.
44.
And he's an Iraqi Chaldean.
Correct.
So you calculate back 24 years. I think if I didn't do this wrong in my head, I think that's 1982 he came here.
Actually, I thought he said 44, but
44.
Nevertheless, it's a long time.
Okay, suppose someone came to this country in 1982, the middle of the Iran-Iraq War, a terrible time.
Yes.
And they went to the American Embassy. Probably the American Embassy made that decision. Today, what I'm saying is there's a new process. It looks the same. Your stamp is still from the U.S. Embassy, but the decision is actually being made in Washington in Homeland Security. And they will vet you. The president says, we want to do extreme vetting. They do extreme vetting.
Yes.
They go through your background. They do every conversation you've had. They'll check you and see if you've been talking to extremist groups on the phone. They go through with a fine-tooth comb. And if they find anything about you, they're going to flag you and say, just deny this. So I think you can see a really different dynamic about how decisions are being made. And it's interesting what our security forces have said is that the Homeland, the executive order is not really necessary because we're already doing these things.
Ron, related to the comment before Jerry called about the impact or the benefit of different kinds of people in a classroom in our universities.
Yes.
One of the things that I guess maybe I observed years and years ago as a college kid, we thought that place was a safe environment and to learn, to explore, to share ideas and so on. And are you seeing a change on college campuses of the rhetoric or the conversation that are taking place among students as a result of what's going on in the country as a whole?
We have been, on my particular campus, we have been spared any of those problems that I've read about in other places. Mm-hmm. I get two regular news sources that monitor what's happening on campuses across the country. And you've had some bad incidents. Basically, ideological escalations. Someone wants to make a speech and other people will close them down and shout them down. This doesn't necessarily have to do with Muslims, but it has to do with this angry spirit that I think has been unleashed in the country.
Yes.
And the president is not the only contributor to that. There are other factors. But the fact is he escalated it intentionally for his campaign. And but I think the universities in general have made a major effort to create and maintain an environment of civility where people can have discussions. They're having, I know President Schlissel yesterday, the University of Michigan president, he mentioned that this is one of the great challenges to promote civility. And I know my own chancellor, Dan Little, has made similar statements that we have to promote and maintain civility. So far, most universities are doing that. But you hear about these incidents where somebody puts some awful thing on the wall or something, and writes something, some bad thing about some racial or ethnic or religious group, and usually it's an isolated person, and everybody's appalled by it. But the fact is, even if an individual does that, it has a terrible impact on the tone and the spirit of what's happening in the university.
Several colleges and universities publicly came out against the ban. And the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities did. The ACCU said that it stands in solidarity with other Catholic and higher education organizations that recognize the moral obligation of the country to assist migrants, particularly those who are fleeing any kind of persecution. And so, we're Catholic colleges have signed on to say, okay, there is a moral imperative here that we shut this ban down. And so my question to you, Dr. Ron, is how can the significant numbers of colleges and universities that have this same feeling as your chancellor, Dr. Dan, and the head of the whole University of Michigan system, as well as all these Catholic colleges and universities around the country that have come out in opposition, how can they have an impact on that ban and that policy?
Well, it's interesting. They can't very well oppose the ban. They're not. If that ban is upheld by the courts, which it hasn't been yet, but if it's upheld by the courts, then it's legal and they're required to comply with it. But what they're saying is that we are going to protect our students. We're not, and there's something we haven't talked about. I think it's very important.
Please do.
They say that if somebody, this is the term sanctuary cities, or sanctuary universities, which I think is a bad term. But basically they say if a student applies for a scholarship, we're not going to ask them what their legal status is. If they're enrolled in the university, then they're eligible for the scholarship. And we're not going to say, oh, by the way, could we see your visa? We won't do that. So, and if there's a student that happens to be illegally here, someone who was brought here when they were 2 years old and is now at the University of Michigan system, we're not going to pursue those people, and that's the job of the Immigration Service to do that. We won't do that. Okay. And so this is not resistance, but it's saying that we have a job. We're going to do our job. You do your job, and don't ask us to do your job. So I think that's a very positive way of dealing with this, that we are not going to become the enforcers of a ban of some kind, or perhaps a deportation order.
Do you think that the banning together, if you will, of the colleges and universities, of whether they're public or private in this case, will have an impact on policy?
Oh, it will have a major impact. I'll give you an example. Somebody who's a Michigan insider told me this. A few years ago, someone proposed in the legislature that anybody who is a farm worker has to show their identity, that they're legally in the country. And the Farmers Association in the state of Michigan went very quietly to the head of the Republican Party, this was a Republican legislator, and said, do not pass that legislation. You'll wreck our economy. Because everybody knows that a very large number of workers in the agricultural field are immigrants, illegal immigrants. They're here working in those jobs. There's nobody else to do it. It's not as if a bunch of our 18-year-olds in local high schools are willing to go out and work in the fields.
That's right.
So I think that you're going to get really big pushback from major institutions. The Silicon Valley is already pushing back. They're saying, look, if you start banning people, you're going to wreck our industry, because we rely on high-tech people from different countries. Right. And so some of the very countries that are being targeted, these are places where we recruit people. So I think universities, corporations, Silicon Valley, agriculture, all of these are going to say, okay, slow down for a minute now. If you phrase it this way, you're going to cause real harm for our particular industry, so don't do that. And these people have a lot of clout.
Well, Ron, you have a lot of clout, and I know that we don't want to disappoint your students who are going to be waiting for you for their 9 o'clock class. I am so grateful, as we all here are at Sawal Hawa, for you taking time to be with us today. You always have great insights for us, Ron, and it's not a wonder that your students flock to your classes. I thank you so much for being with us. We're going to take a break, everybody, and Dr. Ron will be back with us again sometime, and please call us, because we're going to have Dr. Denise Williams Mallet from Marygrove College talk about how international students can still benefit from a U.S. education. Thank you again, Dr. Ron. Have a beautiful day, and everybody, that phone number is 248-557-3300. We'll be right back.
Bye, Renee.
Welcome to the United States. Please proceed to the passport control.
ماذا يقول؟ إلى أين أذهب؟ ماذا علي أن أفعل؟ لو سمحت، هل تساعدني؟ ماذا قال هذا الرجل في الإعلان؟
ألا تعرف الإنجليزية؟
أعرف، ولكن أساسيات فقط.
عليك بتعلم اللغة.
ولكن أين؟
يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام، أساتذة متخصصون، منهج متميز، يمكنك التسجيل طوال العام. لرسوم التسجيل ومواعيد الفصول الدراسية عليك الاتصال بالهاتف رقم
586-797-6960 586-797-6960.
تحدث اللغة وتعلم نمط الحياة مع يوتيكا كوميونيتي سكول ESL بروجرام. تعلم، تحدث وأكثر.
There's a cool vibe in Detroit these days, the same vibe that's at Marygrove College. We've got great career-oriented degrees that will put you on a path to your future, on campus and online. Why not explore Marygrove? You could start college this spring. Go to marygrove.edu or call 313-927-1240 to get more information. International students pay the same rate as domestic students, and let us empower you.
سوا على الهوا سوا على الهوا يأتيكم عبر أثير إذاعة
صباح الخير أمريكا
من يوم اللي اتكون يا وطني الموج كنا سوا.
Welcome back, everybody. This is your host, Renée Ahee. Thank you for joining us on Sawa al Hawa. We're together on air this morning with Dr. Denise Williams Mallet. I'm thrilled to welcome you, Dr. Denise. Thank you so much for being my guest this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Given that the several international students have some trepidation to come to the United States, and we know that they're already migrating to other English-speaking countries like Canada and Australia and New Zealand,
Yes.
we still have something available to them in the United States. Everybody, Dr. Mallet will be offering you some options, but I want to introduce her to you. She's the Vice President for Enrollment and Student Affairs at Detroit's Marygrove College, an accredited private Catholic liberal arts college. Dr. Mallet has 17 years of higher education experience in both 2-year and 4-year institutions. She earned her Bachelor in Business Administration, Master of Arts with a concentration in Human Resource, and an Educational Specialist degree with a concentration in Administration and Supervision. And she is a Doctor of Education with a concentration in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies. Her doctoral dissertation was on student retention. Today she wants to talk about retaining international students at colleges like Marygrove. So welcome again, Denise, to Sawa al Hawa. You've got some interesting information for listeners abroad who may be afraid to come to the country but still value an American college degree.
Yes.
Many students from Muslim nations and non-Muslim nations still want to get this kind of degree from an accredited university in the United States. How is that possible?
Well, thank you, Renee. Absolutely. It's still an opportunity for them, for any student, international or abroad, but definitely international, to receive a U.S. accredited education, because the F1 student visa regulations still remain active. So that's something that I don't want them to be deterred of physically coming to the United States to have that experience. But we do have online options for many students that want to take a fully, program, undergraduate or graduate, and Marygrove offers that for a student.
Do they do that on the bachelor level and on the master's level as well?
Yes, they do. So we have bachelor's programs for those students, as well as that's a full entire program, as well as a master's program, and that's most of our programs that are there.
Tell us about the bachelor's degrees first.
Well, our 2 fully online accredited programs are criminal justice as well as business. And I know business is a highly sought after American degree that many students want to have. And I think Dr. Ron spoke to it best. America still has that, I think, cachet, and more importantly, that influence of how policy works, how the interaction of having the business sense of America can benefit any person nationally.
Marygrove College for its 90 years has been known for its education, teaching the teachers.
Yes.
And among the master's degrees, I think, can you tell us all about those master's degrees, many of which are education-oriented, right?
That's correct. Our master's degree programs that are fully online include our human resource management, criminal justice, but going into the education where I think we are, that 90-year reputation of being stellar is in our education technology, educational leadership, special education, and reading specialists. And with our educational leadership, there's a concentration in school administration certification that's available. Again, all online, all available. And often what I want to make sure that's relayed in this. I know the online education is not like a physical in classroom presence for some, but Marygrove has this special knack of the interaction that a student have, be it a mile away or 1,000 miles away, of making them feel included, understanding the curriculum, having the hands-on or maybe online interaction with that professor, so they don't miss that engagement that's necessary for a student to succeed.
Well, do these courses have to be offered in English, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Yeah. So what does what do they need actually if they want to take a course online or a degree online?
Right. Well, they have to apply. So let's get you applied, have a student apply so we can go through the process. It's necessary that they pass or meet those requirements. So we do ask for a TOEFL requirement. Undergraduate is different than graduate. We're asking that they have, and the TOEFL, just so we're clear, most people know that, but it's the test of English as a foreign language.
Yes.
And so that gives us a gauge of what we consider minimum requirements or minimum expectations to understand and interact with the curriculum and the students and professors. So the undergraduate, we're asking for 525 for the PBT, which is a paper-based test, 196, which is our computer-based test, and a 70 for the internet-based test.
Those are scores? Is that
those
what
are
you're talking
scores.
about? I see.
Yes,
Okay.
if I'm not clear. So thank you. So those are scores undergraduate. For graduate scores, for students that are interested in the TOEFL, it's 550 for the paper-based test, 213 for the computer-based, and 80 for the internet-based test, with a 21 plus in the writing section.
Okay, because they'll be doing writing in English, and their assignments will all be in English.
Assignments all in English, right.
Right. So they will. One of the questions I had about, particularly something like educational leadership and the other things that you're teaching about the systems in other countries. These are American-based systems, so they'll be looking at what laws are applicable to education in the United States. They'll be looking at budgets, school districts' budgets, and so on. How does Marygrove help to? Well, maybe that's even important for them to know. And how do they apply it in their own countries?
Well, what they've, with many of the faculty members, and when we have students, let's just say that a student is an international student, and they are working abroad from online, our professors make sure that it's relevant. Now, we are clearly going to speak to the inner workings of what it takes for American education systems, and that ranges from community-based, like you mentioned, law, but more importantly, what they want to do is some of the projects or some of the courses and the papers or curriculum that you're writing to and learning from relates to the population that you're serving.
Oh, I see.
Yes. So very similar to any international, it may be a school system that you'll do research on, so that you can understand what it takes to be a leader, as an educational leader, and some of the community-based and or legal issues that you may have to address.
Educational technology is also something that's really booming here in school districts. We anticipate that would be the same thing in other countries, but is that the case? I mean, that's my assumption, but I don't know that.
I agree. Educational technology, and this is where I think the world gets smaller in a great way, so that we can interact. Just speaking of an online opportunity, if you're online and you can take an entire degree, that technology there, so that you can Skype in, do different things, but the technology needed to, let's prepare our students for a global education, or interacting with students, or using some, current, as technology, the evolution of that continues, clearly we want to make sure that we're first in preparing our students to be leaders in the industry.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question for Dr. Denise Williams Mallet, please call us at 248-557-3300. One of the things that Dr. Ron acknowledged about Marygrove is that because we are a private institution, we can offer our international students the tuition at the same rate that we offer it to domestic students. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That's kind of what a bonus.
Yeah, it's absolutely a bonus. What we've done as a private institution, and many similar institutions like ours across the nation, is that we set a pricing that prepares our students. We don't want to penalize a student for being in-state or out-of-state.
Okay.
We understand the investment necessary and to make Marygrove a more flourishing institution and having different students there, having different backgrounds to contribute to the classroom. And I think Dr. Ron mentioned that as well. But what we've done, and some pricing that we have, and I won't get into a lot of detail, I encourage everyone to go to marygrove.edu to find all the details about our requirements, what our tuition will be. But what we've done is price that so that it's competitive with other institutions nationally, locally, and statewide. Do you want me?
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's perfect. One of the things that we want to tell our international listeners about Marygrove College is that it is, in addition to signing on to the opposition for the ban, Marygrove is also very oriented to social justice issues, and these kinds of things, the ban, anti-immigrant sentiment, all of those things are something that we address by virtue of our mission, and to create competence, compassion, and commitment. And we only have a couple minutes here, but I can tell the viewers that one of the interesting things about Marygrove in the social justice program, while it's not offered online, everybody, we have created a Muslim cohort. Can you take 1 minute to tell us about that?
Sure. Gosh, we're so excited about it. This program is our traditional Masters in Social Justice program that has been uniquely designed as a cohort for imams and Muslim leaders. Imams and other Muslim community leaders are interested in social analysis, social trends, how to promote change within their communities, which is quite frankly our community, and build on a more just and peaceful community for us all. In the current U.S. political and social climate and beyond, the knowledge and understanding gained from a Marygrove social justice degree will help Muslim leaders to guide their community towards balance and appreciate an appropriate, peaceful society for us all. So we're so pleased to be a part of this. It's the first cohort started this winter, and it was fantastic. So
well, thank you, Dr. Denise, for going. Everybody, we've got to go. I'm sorry. We'll see you again soon on Sawal Hawa. Thank you to Dr. Denise Williams Mallet from Marygrove College. Thanks to our wonderful technician, Mike, and have a beautiful day, everybody. Thanks for being here.